Welcome to selfdiscoverywisdom.com, formerly known as Self-Discovery Media. On these podcasts, you're going to hear people who speak from the heart. They've taken the journey in life. Many things have happened to them, but they've changed it to happening for them. And in their strength, their courage, they've discovered their abilities and their wisdom, and they are now sharing it here with you. Do enjoy each show. We bring it to you with love and knowing that it's going to help you on your journey of life. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Ignite Your Heart and Soul right here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my guest today is Mark J. Chironna, PhD. What are we going to be talking about? We're going to be talking about the world shifts. And boy, is the world shifting in the present moment. He says there are moments in history when the world shifts, not in small incremental ways, but in systemic, irreversible transformations. To navigate such times wisely is imperative that we learn to recognize where we stand in the arc of history. Every era carries within it a weight of the past, the demands of the present, and the unseen forces of the future pressing upon it. As I'm not going to pronounce this name, you'll have to fill that in for
Sohail
me.
Inayatullah.
Thank you, has observed. The future is not a distant horizon, but an active force shaping the present, just as the past continues to exert influence in the ways we do not recognize. True discernment requires holding these three dimensions in tension, learning from what it has been, reckoning what it is, and preparing for what is to come. I really would like you to go to selfdiscoverywisdom.com and put in his name because there's a lot more that he writes here that I'm not going to be reading today, but I really do want you to read because it's very profound and we need to talk about this. He is a public scholar, executive and personal coach, and thought leader, and 5 decades of experience in leadership development, cultural analysis, future-focused strategies, and with advanced degrees in psychology, applied semantics and future studies, and theology. He brings a unique, indisliberate, I'm having a hard time with words today, approach to help individuals and organizations navigate complexity, unlock potential, and craft innovation solutions. So we have good 4 books that he has here, and what we're going to be emphasizing on today's life quest, but there's also Born to be Blessed, Shadow Self, and Standing Impossible Ground, the unfolding process of the law of faith. So let's get right to it. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thank you, sir. It's great to be here.
We just had a little chat before we went on air. We're talking, we decided, are we going to talk about what's happening presently? And I think desperately we need to, because when I interview people and when I follow social media, we've literally, I talked to someone the other day and she said, I live alone, I'm scared. I'm going to sell my house, I need to get a gun because I don't know when anybody's going to come irrationally pounding at my door at any time. And this is really something that's absolute. We can't turn a blind eye to this. I'm in Canada, you're in the States. Of course, we are under threat as well right now. And when we look at the world, it's almost like it's been thrown up in the air and let's see where it lands. And about 7 years ago, the universe gave me a saying, we're going to shake you up, to wake you up, for you to step up, to change it up and to grow up love, kindness, and compassion. But also I'd add another double entendre there of grow up, because we seem to be holding on to things that no longer serve us, that put us in fear and in hate, and also cloud our judgment in so many ways. So we have so much to talk about. Where would you like to start?
Oh, wherever you want. Just throw a few questions at me. I'll do my best. I don't have all the answers, but I'll surely share with you what I've struggled with and what I've seen. So,
Okay, let's just take the current thing. Every single day, there's a new bombardment thrown at us, and then people are feeling paralyzed. And they're feeling, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. We obviously have to get people to calm so we can help them see the trees through the woods. But how do you address that?
yeah, that's a great question. There is a sense in which what the world needs is people that carry a non-anxious presence.
Mm,
Not always easy, but it's
no.
essential. It's essential. And right now, it's more needful than ever because what what has evolved in terms of the various waves and cycles that are moving historically. History doesn't repeat itself literally, but it does move in cycles. And if we
Hmm.
can, when Santayana said those who forget history are doomed to repeat it, if
Yes.
we don't pay attention
Hmm.
to historical cycles, it is very difficult. In future studies, we are compelled to look at what Sohail Inayatullah calls the weight of the past,
Hmm.
the push of the present, and the pull of the future. We live in a what we call a postmodern culture,
Hmm.
which is like nondescript. What does that mean? Well, what it does mean in many senses is that history doesn't matter. The challenge with that is that, if you say there's no absolutes, you're making an absolute statement. But the fact is, the moment you delegitimize history, you cut yourself off from very real influences that are still impacting us generations later. So failure to take into account, I've traveled a lot by car as well as I've been all over the world, but in America, when you drive the interstates, and even probably on the Trans-Canada Highway, it's the same thing. But if you go to a rest stop,
Hmm.
normally between the restrooms, there's a map of the province you're in or the state, and there's an arrow that says you are here,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of times when my wife and I would drive across the country for various meetings, you could be driving for hours and think you're way further than you are, and that arrow is a call
Yes.
to reality, and it's like not always encouraging. Like you think you're like way closer to where you want to get, and you're only like this far on the map.
Uh-huh.
But if we cannot recognize that current reality is
Hmm.
shaped by forces that long preceded us, and that the decisions we make now will have
Hmm.
impact on future generations, the weightiness of that we're to be stewards of the present moment for the
Yeah.
sake of future generations, it's almost as if we've lost that. So, Sarah, there are a number of cycles that are converging. Some of them are geopolitical, that are tied to the last 80 to 100 years. Some of them are economic. Some of them are racial.
Yes.
And there are economic. And within that, there are these global dynamics taking place: populism,
Hmm.
nationalism.
Hmm.
These things are emerging. And historically, they don't end well, right?
No.
But if we don't
No.
pay attention
Hmm.
to how they didn't end well, we end up thinking, "Oh, this must be great. This is going to really work out well." Well, it just doesn't. But because we now live in social media has promoted echo chambers where we're never challenged in critical thinking skills. We
No.
are not invited to think outside our box. And then with that, the rise of conspiracy thinking in greater ways than ever before in history. So there's fear mongering, and people are left exhausted emotionally and
Absolutely.
are battling existential fears, existential anxieties. And there are sadly, there are those that, okay, if I know more about me than you know about me, I can control the conversation.
Hmm.
If I know more about you than you know about you, I can control you.
Yes.
And
Yes.
there are just certain personalities in history that they're like wolves in sheep's clothing. They're
Oh boy. Oh boy.
and they instinctually know things about the human condition, and they can read people very quickly, not just individually but in a
Hmm.
group collective, so they know the room. And if we don't know how they know the room, we are
Yes.
subject to seduction and
Oh gosh.
control and manipulation. And the goal is to capitalize on the fear
Hmm.
to bring about a sense of powerlessness and helplessness.
Everything you said, tick, 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 tick. Absolutely. I've said all the time, when you have people in fear, you have control over them,
Absolutely.
right? Like along pulling the strings. It's sensationalism. and people buy into it until all sense of reasoning or deduction has gone out the window. They are now in such a state of like this, that whatever the person says, even though their rationality would say this is ridiculous, in that state becomes the absolute, right? And how do we bring people down from that when they can get back to the center and think for themselves? And it kind of, was it Einstein saying, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result?
Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing, is that when people are in trauma, for whatever trauma there is, childhood, accidents, deceit, you name it, unless you recognize the trauma and deal with the trauma, that trauma always travels with you and will always dictate how you're going to interact in life, right? So if we're looking at feeling traumatized at the present moment, we need to recognize we're feeling traumatized, right? Now, how do I take back my power? How do I empower myself that I'm not going to rise up to that and give myself away, which is what we've seen so many people do.
Yeah, it's become an epidemic.
And another pandemic, yes, it is.
It's widespread. It's
yes. Survivors.
So from a perspective of depth psychology, if we were to just take a look at Carl Jung and his work on the unconscious, there is not just the personal unconscious. There's the collective unconscious.
Yes.
Here's the thing about the unconscious. We're not conscious of what's going on down there, but what's going on down there is controlling things in ways that we're not aware of. Even in whatever is in the unconscious is in control, because that's where those deeply embedded triggers are. It's where those deeply embedded responses are, mental models of how the world works, things we inherited and were shaped by in the formational years of our life that I've yet to meet a perfect human being. All of us are dysfunctional.
No, there's a beautiful
Melody Beattie, you gave me the word permission in the 80s. Codependent no more. I learned I was dysfunctional. I'm not embarrassed by it anymore.
No, you're flawsome. There's a word I discovered a few years ago, flawsome. Every single one of us is flawed, but that's what makes us unique. And if we learn to be awesome in our flawsomeness, right? We own the flaw. It's my idiosyncrasy. It's who I am, right? And we know, is it a flaw that is detrimental or is it a quirk? And because we're so busy trying to live up to the societal expectation of what you should be, right? And then we fall short of it because it's an illusion.
Exactly.
And it's delusional, right? And we don't honor who we really are and accept all the beautiful little flaws that we have, those that we can mend and those that we need to accept of ourselves.
Yeah, and one of the things Jung was really, again, with it, if we think about where we are in the culture, we are technique driven. And we want 3 easy steps to every problem in life. We've got microwaves. I can put a meal in a microwave in 2 minutes. It's ready. My grandma would spend hours. I grew up in an Italian culture, so grandma, her whole life was cooking for the family, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But grandma would spend hours before. That was her way of saying love, right?
Yes.
Everything is instant now, and somehow we're swimming in these waters of instant this, instant that.
Instant gratification.
That we want things to be fixed.
Yeah.
And there are certain aspects of our humanness that are with us for the entire journey that can't be fixed. They need to be embraced and accepted. We need to carve out room. When Brené Brown talks about the spirituality of imperfection, right? It's okay. Brokenness and beauty are commingled in us. And if I can't accept that, if I can't accept that, I won't go on a healing journey. And our souls are summoning us to wholeness and healing, right?
Yes.
And so I need to pay attention to the summons that come from the soul to grow up and to show up, as James says, Jungian therapist, to grow up and show up. But because of the nature of the multiple echo chambers that people live in now in social media and sound bites, They've been seduced into letting other people do their thinking for them.
I know. And
And
that's scary.
it is, it's
It's
very
so
scary
very scary. I all
because
of the
it's
headliners.
enslaving. It's
Yeah, it
utterly
is.
enslaving.
Absolutely. You know, uh, I refer to something called the sunny side of the street. And, you know, it's you have the dark side of the street, you have the road, and you have the sunny side of the street. And to get to that sunny side of the street, we've got to be willing to do the work, take the journey, go through whatever it is that's our challenges are, and come out that other side where we can embrace who we are wholly, completely from the inside out. We don't get there unless we're willing to take that journey and do the work. You can't go into the dark side and pull someone out. They've got to get onto the road. They've got to be willing to get onto the road and say, I'm now ready for help. And all you can do is give them the tools and the encouragement. They've got to apply it themselves. What I have found, I've been doing this nearly 13 years. I'm 70, so I've been around a while. But what I have found is the absence of self responsibility or accountability. It's the old finger pointing, it's their fault, their fault, their fault. But where is your responsibility? What's your action? What are you going to do about it? And it's that again, that sensationalism, and it's giving everybody that sugar high, and then they crash and they take more sugar and crash. And this is what I feel society is doing. Where is the depth? I get this with the podcast. Oh, your podcast should be 10 minutes. Nobody's got the attention span. I said, it's not for those people. This is for the people who want to know, right? And if we don't take the time to know, the time to learn, the time to ask, the time to seek, we're constantly going to be empty.
Absolutely. One of my favorite phrases, I've used it for years. I can't remember if I borrowed it or if it came to my mind. I'm sure it's not original with me, but it became one of my mantras, slow down to the speed of life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we are living, once we entered the digital age, 1950, 1955, the rapid pace of accelerated change caused change to change.
Yes.
We're now in a multiplied level of accelerated change. So whatever we may have experienced, at least for me, I'm 70 as well. So I remember growing up, grandma and grandpa on my both sides of the family. Grandma and grandpa, lived in the same house their whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Before downsizing and before families were split apart because of all the technological advances. And grandma and grandpa, the degree to which they were exposed to information in a month or a year, we're exposed to in 24 hours.
I know. And we're oversaturated.
And it's debilitating to the psyche. We don't know how to turn this. We think everything becomes urgent.
Yeah.
But it's rooted in fear.
Yep.
And all of us need to recognize existential anxiety, Rollo May, existential fear. Someone once said to me that anxiety, the what if thinking that can really debilitate us. Anxiety is the logical mind's attempt to analyze deeper rooted fears.
Mm-hmm.
And that just struck with me because I've battled that. I'm an Italian. I inherited anxiety. I live to worry.
My son's just married an Italian. I know.
So worry is my middle name, right? So anxiety, worry. That's normal. Like for me, that dysfunction is normal. Anxiety is normal. You live with it, right? And I've had my share of real dark seasons with anxiety. But we do have to slow down to the point where we become conscious of those drivers. If it's driving me at a deeper level, that if we think of that image, it might have been Freud of here's the surface of the ocean, here's a sailboat. The sailboat is our conscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
The waves are our feelings. Mm-hmm. Everything below that is unconscious. Mm-hmm. But the way that I become conscious and get to that prima materia that's down there is I've got to get in touch with my feelings. And
Real feelings.
with the real ones, right? So,
Yes.
and we need to distinguish between emotions, feelings, and moods. So, at a very simple level, what makes me feel it is it shows up in my body.
Yes.
The body keeps the
Dis-ease.
score. The body
Yes.
keeps the score. So,
Yes.
at some point, if I want to move in a direction of wholeness and well-being and flourishing, I've got to slow down to the speed of this is the feeling I'm wrestling with,
Yeah.
and not run away from it,
No,
not let it uh,
consume you.
exactly, but listen to what the underlying hidden conversation is. Because there's a dialogue going around those feelings, and that dialogue, that's a script that goes back
Yeah.
a ways in us, and the only way for that story to change is for us to become aware this is part of the selfish story we're living into. And right now, Sarah, um, I think people are living in day-tight compartments where they're not even dreaming about the future anymore. They just want to survive the day. They just want to get through the day, and it's painful. It's just painful.
I know, and I, as I said, I've not only interviewed people who are expressing this, but talk to people, and it's the insanity, I think, that's really getting to people. How did we get here? Did we not learn? Why didn't we pay attention to science? And I've got a little saying: the universe gives you a nudge, nudge, wink, wink, and if you're not paying attention, it gives you a cosmic 2x4. And we're getting a cosmic 2x4 right now.
Yeah. Mhm.
And it's like, was our headers going, like those cartoon characters, boing, right? And as we get back into focus, my thing is this, okay, well, what are you going to do about it? Don't be powerless or
Mhm.
crippled or so angry. I mean, yes, be angry what's going on. It's atrocious.
Right.
But what can we do about it? And this is where as a collective need to come together. And I started a new podcast genre called The Sisterhood of Common Sense Love, and of all the men that love and support them. Because I do think that women with the mama attitude, roll up the sleeves. Now, come on, this behavior is just not acceptable. And we're going to have to change it in order for you to move forward. And I think that's where we're at. And there's going to be so many people spat out
Mhm.
and crippled by this. And we can't turn around and say, we told you so. We've got to go, let's pick you up, let's help you. And the best way we can to help you move forward, to empower yourself, give you the tools. And I feel this is where, whenever, even with COVID, as detrimental as it was and horrifying as it was also a gift, because for so many people, they slowed down and for the first time in a long time had time to be with themselves. And
So,
how many people redirected from that? We've got another gift here packaged in, in barbed wire. But the gift is, how do we come and stand united as a collective against the forces?
mhm.
And it's not pitchforks, it's arm in arm
Right.
from the heart.
Right. It reminds me of, I was deeply impacted growing up by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Nonviolent resistance, the way of love. I still believe in that, deeply believe in
I
it.
do. If I don't, I don't see the point of being here.
And I'm part of the Christian tradition, and I'm not ashamed of what I am. I fully embrace in the tradition. What I am ashamed of is the way that tradition has become hijacked and the message has been weaponized.
Yes,
And
it's
I
lost its love.
it has. And
Mm.
um, the one who said, love God, love your neighbors, and love your enemies, has now become this tool to control, to manipulate, to
Mm.
dominate. So not uh, anything I've ever wanted to talk about that way. I have nothing in common with it. I don't even call it a good theology. It's an ideology.
Yeah.
It's a remaking of
But that's what this regime is all about right now, remaking. And I do my own show every week, and I have to say there's been quite a number of shows on, election empathy, of how it's affected people of psychic ability, because it shatters,
Right.
everything that we stand for. And I put one out this week on poverty versus wealth, and you've got people who are so ultra rich, and I feel what happens when they get so ultra rich, they're so paranoid over losing the money, they're so paranoid of losing the power that money gives them, that they've lost themselves. And you've got people that are on the poverty line that struggle every single day, and they live in gratitude for everything they have. And they are the givers, they are the sharers, they are the enriched and the abundant. And the people that are constantly chasing power are so poor inside. And until they're willing to go in and heal themselves, it doesn't matter if they own the world, they will always be poor.
Absolutely. Totally. And you would think, well, let's put it this way. There's a lot that goes on in the culture that is, I'd like to believe that if I'm transparent, authentic, self-aware, um, loving, caring, civil, open, that I'm being led into a future that's desirable.
Yes.
So I'd like to think, and again, that's based on my theological presupposition that I'm being led.
Yeah.
But what I see right now is that people are being driven. It's
Mm,
become a herd mentality. And
yeah.
again, we're back to this toxic structure and system of power differentials that has utterly dehumanized.
A thug mentality.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
dehumanizing.
Yeah.
And then it gives
And who
liberty.
wins? Nobody.
Yeah,
Not
nobody
even
wins. And
them.
it gives liberty and permission for people that would not otherwise
Yeah.
have given voice to that kind of diatribe to join the conversation and just spout off, and none of which helps us. The more we do that, the more we destroy ourselves.
So luckily, I remember meeting a gentleman some years ago, and he was going to write a book about being the bully and how he became the bully. And he became a
Uh,
bully of self-defense. If I bully for you, you won't bully me. And he was 44 at the time. And he said, I've been riddled with guilt all these years because I became the bully and hurt other people because I was being hurt. And then to stop me being hurt, I hurt other people and I feel more hurt because of it. Right. And all these people in this thug mentality right now that are riding high on the, yeah, let's get them. When the sugar high comes down, so to speak,
right.
and they have to sit with themselves,
Themselves.
what they're not going to like what they see. There may be a great deal of denial and they won't even recognize, they don't want to see. But for those that actually do come back into their consciousness and see it, I think we're going to see, I'm sorry to say it, a lot of suicides.
Yeah.
Because I think we're seeing people do things through this hysteria that if they just stopped for a moment and thought and felt, they would never do.
Yeah. The psyche, I don't think, the psyche is not made to tolerate that kind of distortion,
Yeah.
that kind of dissonance. So those that continue to deny are, some of them are not just suppressing, I'll use a word that's not popular anymore among psychologists, repressing. That
Mm-hmm.
mind has the capacity to bury something so deep and compartmentalize it, we don't even realize it exists anymore.
Exactly.
And but eventually, Jung said this, what we bury alive
Mm-hmm.
stays alive. So
Mm-hmm.
at some point, the psyche breaks.
Yes.
There comes a breaking point. So
Yes.
we're storing up for ourselves this, in if we continue to
Mm.
do that, we don't realize how self-sabotaging that is. Eventually, there's going to come a break. It could be a psychotic break. It
Yeah.
could be um, all sorts of dynamics that aren't pretty. But again, I think it's tied to this thing that I'm calling drivenness, right?
Yeah.
they're not being led, they're being driven. And, I want to
They're
say,
not even being shepherded
yeah,
because it's
right,
not done with love. It's right.
right.
It's just, my grandson is 3.5 and he loves to play with cars and he loves it when the cars go fast and crash. Right. And like I showed him a video of cars on the ice slipping and sliding. And right. So now his cars slip and slide and he has so much fun with it. But I feel that's kind of what's going on.
Mm.
People are actually walking on ice right now and they don't realize they're crashing into each other until there's a pile up and they're underneath. So,
Yeah. It's very painful. It's hard, we're both 70. When I was 20 and I had faint thoughts about where I would be at 70,
yeah.
you have images of the life you want to live,
Yeah.
the way you want to grow, the friends you want to walk
Yeah.
with for the journey. Having arrived here at this season, in this epoch, this is not what I envisioned. And I didn't expect to be dealing with the level of sorrow
Yeah.
and sadness.
Mm-hmm.
And there are nights I'll lay in bed and I'll be deeply saddened
Yeah.
by just the way the way things have so unfolded that the level of dehumanization is just it's painful. And I've been in the
I
people helping business for 50 years, so this is like
yes.
not what I signed up for.
No, no, I 100% agree. And, it's like, I just don't get it. I don't get it. Why do humans hurt other humans so much? And it's like, I understand, you've got people that have been in a cycle of, generations of abuse towards one another. And you would think that a child that's been abused wouldn't abuse their own child, but it's so subliminal that they don't realize there's a pattern inbred there, that they're automatically doing it without registering they're doing it. And so we need to look at our DNA patterning.
Absolutely.
Okay. And we need to address it. We need to
Right.
find our courage and our strength and our abilities and face those things that are going to get in the way. And if we don't, we will repeat.
Right. We're living into stories that we've inherited and adopted voices that are not our own
Mm,
based on former generations' dysfunction. And we do have to become conscious of the story we're telling ourselves. And we have to do that. No one can do that. We could bring something to someone's attention
yes.
with all the love and care. And yet, unless they're willing to
Mm-hmm.
do the work,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Free will.
and I honestly, sir, there are times with some people, I've just said, you know what, I want to help you, but when helping you is hurting me,
Exactly. That's like
um,
going into the darkness
yeah,
instead of,
exactly.
yeah,
And
exactly.
I can't afford to do that.
No.
So knock yourself out when you hit the wall and you ready to look at things in a different light. Come on back and we'll talk.
And I've been a different form of spiritual counselor through my life as well. By God's design, it wasn't my design. It just didn't matter what I was doing, I'd always end up being in that role. People would seek me out. And it was always about who are we really? And are you living that expectation life and it's not serving you? Is this a dictation life that somebody's dictated to you? And are you allowing yourself to hear yourself from the inside out? Now, I know it's been a journey of mine. I was a people pleaser. I bent myself into a pretzel to be what everybody else wanted me to be at the cost of myself. And it was a long journey for me to come out and embrace who I am in all my flawsomeness and say, I'm enough with who I am. Um, but we and our generation didn't, and especially as a woman, didn't have permission to do that. Who do you think you are? You're being selfish. You're here to be for others. Now we're changing the dialogue. You're no good to others unless you serve yourself, right? It's not self serving, it's self caring.
I can't give what I don't have.
Exactly. Oxygenate yourself. Yes, exactly.
I mean, I just can't. I can't offer you something I'm not living in. That
Ex-
and outside of the fact that that's whatever that is, it's false.
yeah.
it's not real. It's
Exactly.
hollow. It's, we talk about holograms. I call it a hologram. It's just like, will the real you please show
Step
up?
up. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think now we're in an era of permission. Again, for the 13 years of doing this almost, the people that I've interviewed have come from, many of them have come from horrific things happening to them in life. Like no human being should ever go through that. But they made the choice, courage, strength, discover their ability, discover their calling, what they're really here to do, ignite their heart and their soul, and
Mhm.
become the being, not just the humanoid. And they are now such a gift to other people because people, I believe that inspiration begets invitation. And when you're inspired by
Absolutely.
somebody, it invites you to believe you can.
Absolutely.
And so this is the reason why I'm driven to do this. And my calling to humanity is recognize the danger, recognize the ones that are pulling the strings, but let's collectively get the scissors out and cut those strings collectively from a place of heart, not damnation,
Right.
but from a place of heart. Let love win.
Right. Totally. Totally.
But now, how do we empower people that are in that anxiety right now? How do we empower them to calm the anxiety down and get to that space where, okay, there's a typhoon going on all around me. I'm in the eye, right? I need to get out. But they're never going to get out if they're in that level, high level. They need to come down into the center, peaceful level. How do we help them get there?
Well, that's a powerful question. Sarah, from 2007 to almost 2011, I went through the darkest season of my life.
Mm-hmm.
It was a perfect storm, and I I was overwhelmed by intense, extreme anxiety, which didn't abate, which led to chronic sleeplessness for 3.5 years. But anxiety, when it's that intense, pairs up with depression.
Yes.
So the anxiety, the depression, and the sleeplessness, it was a deadly cocktail.
And the rabbit hole.
I preferred death to life. And I,
Mm-hmm.
I felt God abandoned me, right?
Yep.
I had to work through all of those. I went and I had to go back and my therapist looked at me at one point. He says, "You've been in the people helping business, and what you're struggling with right now is you can't help yourself." And I said,
Exactly.
"Yeah." And he said, "Mark," he said, "you didn't get here overnight. You're
Mm-hmm.
not going to get out overnight, right?"
Mm-hmm.
So I had to learn. This is just me. This is what I learned. I had to learn how to be with the anxiety without letting it define me.
Right.
And I had to learn I am wrestling with anxiety. I'm not the anxiety.
Mm.
And then, which kind of puts you in a place where you realize there's a part of me that can observe this, even though I'm going through hell. There's a part of me that is observing this, which means the real core self
Yeah.
doesn't have to be fully impacted by this. So if I can begin by observing the anxiety and letting it be what it is without, because there's a certain physical dynamic that's tied to the anxiety because it passes through your body. And sometimes, and what for me, the hardest thing was I wanted to fight my way out, but the harder
Yeah.
I fought, the more
Mm.
intense it became. It's kind of like Chinese
Yes. I
handcuffs,
just,
right?
yes.
The more I fought it, the tighter the grip was. And I
Yeah.
had to learn, let it be what it is.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't have to define you. And when the waves come, some of this is physical. Don't allow the ruminating thoughts and the automatic
Mm.
negative thoughts convince you this is who you are. Because with anxiety, we lose our sense of self. We lose
Yes.
our perception of self. And we need people that love us to
Mm-hmm.
mirror back for us and remind us who we are. Even, and thankfully, I had my best friend walk me through that season. Apart from the therapist, my best friend traveled with me, was on the road with me, stayed up at night with me, but he would always mirror back because he had history with me. And he would
Mm-hmm.
have to remind me of who he knew me to be. And as painful as the journey out was, I wouldn't have made it without a friend,
Yeah.
and so I needed that. But having come out on the other side, I feel like Maya Angelou wouldn't trade nothing for my journey now, because
Yes.
there are
Yes.
gifts I was given
Hmm.
relative to understanding suffering, and how wisdom, I know this isn't popular, but wisdom does come through suffering. Um,
Yeah.
and love suffers, right? So now I've been able to probably I wrote that book I wrote. It's called On the Edge of Hope. I wrote a book on it when I was getting my second doctorate, my PhD, and I had to revisit it 15 years later. And while I was doing the PhD, and I had hiccups from it, but I felt like I needed to tell the story. And but I do want to, for those of your audience that are listening that may be battling, endless cycles of anxiety, I would just want to let them know that they are not alone,
Right.
that the anxiety doesn't have to define them, and that this is a season, not a
Mm.
life sentence. And there are wonderful resources that you can take advantage of in acceptance and commitment theory, Stephen Hayes. If you go on YouTube and look at Stephen's work live when he lectures and when he works with patients, but then also read a couple of Stephen's books. And if you need to get help, get help.
Yeah.
There's no shame in getting help, right?
No, no.
But just acceptance and commitment therapy alone was just such a gift to me at that time, accepting.
Yeah.
And me, my whole life, New York Italian,
Mm.
patriarchal family, you got to always show up and always be strong. And Sarah, my dad by that time was gone. He died in 2003. And my dad's generation, they sucked it up and never talked about their
Oh,
pain.
yes.
And
Yes.
so the one person I grieved not having to talk to in that
Mm.
season was my dad.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to say, Dad, did you go through this? How did you handle it? Because I feel like I'm not doing well. I
Hmm.
feel like I'm a failure. And I longed to have him there to at least say, son, you'll get through this. I just to be able to hear his voice saying you'll get through this, but he wasn't there, right? So I had to learn how to receive that from my friend Vinny, and learn how to walk through it. But it's a season, it's not a sentence, but
Yeah.
we've got to become present to it. And we can't run from it, and we can't. The way we fight it is to accept it.
And it's fine, what is it that's going to get out, get through it? I came from a very tumultuous marriage. I then invested in a technology that got stolen and left me bankrupt. So in my 50s, I'm living out of my car. I've never recovered from that. So financially, of course. But when I started doing podcasting, I will absolutely say that this is what saved me, is,
Wow.
bringing the stories of other people that were struggling and what they did to come out of it, what I've learned about myself in this, what I've applied through other people's journeys and wisdom. And this is called self-discovery wisdom, because we've all got wisdom accessible to us.
Right.
It's already ready to download to us. It cannot come to us if we're in the state of anxiety, depression, when we're crunched over or when we're mad, because we stop the oxygen, the chi, the energy, the flow that comes through us. Our chakras need to be, erect, and everything about us needs to be open and ready to receive. And when we're in that state of being, it comes to us. The wisdom is in the knowingness. Your soul gives you that wisdom for your heart to resonate with, for your spirit to go into action, and for your mind to know the clarity it needs when it needs it. That's the knowingness. And to get to that state, we have to remove thought and feel our
Mhm.
knowledge and not think our knowledge. Because when we think our knowledge, we go, yes, but. When we feel our knowledge, we feel what we need to know at that present. And that's all you need to know in that present. I've always thought that, being that since a child, but I lost my way due to trauma, due to feeling hopeless and failure and helpless. And I went down that depression rabbit hole. And it was, I cannot be here on earth if I'm useless. That was my statement. If I'm useless, if I can't serve, I can't be here. And it was a long journey back, but the journey was through doing this, through hearing other people. And unfortunately, me going to counselors or things like that, it always ended up me counseling them. It just has always been that way, just because the natural counselor comes out of me. But it's find your path. There are podcasts, there are books, there are TED Talks, there are people in your community that you can talk with. It's be willing to be vulnerable with yourself. Be willing to be loving and nurturing of yourself. Be willing to forgive all the things that you've done that you didn't realize were harmful to yourself or to others along the way. Forgive yourself. That love that you so openly give to someone else, give to yourself, and repeat.
We have a hard time doing that. And
We do.
I would argue that
More of a giver you are, the harder it is.
Men have a really hard
Yeah.
time doing that. Right. Right. It's interesting because two things I was thinking of when you're sharing, Ian McGilchrist, medical doctor, psychiatrist, as well as brilliant neuroscientist who in 2010 wrote The Master and His Emissary, which is about the right brain and the left brain and how Western civilization has so focused on left-brained reality that we are destroying ourselves.
Yeah.
And his newest book, which is 800 pages, all these years later, develops that even more. But McGilchrist argues that this season we're in is we're watching the dissolution
Yes.
of a civilization. He's saying it's not the end of the world, but
end of a chapter.
These things that have outlived
Yeah.
their usefulness are being exposed for what they are, and something new is going to emerge, which, obviously we want that, right?
Yeah.
We want to be part. I'd like to believe that we can be part of a company of like-minded men and women in the human race that can anticipate that kind of a future before it arrives and live into it.
That's what I'm living for, is that future.
Yeah.
I'm here to ignite the hearts and souls that want that future, that will make that future happen. That has been my entire lifetime's journey, right? To do. That's what I'm here to do, is for us to wake up, is for us to step up, and for us to change things up, because we know it's broken. A shameless plug I'm going to put here is that last year I produced a book called Our Forgotten Children. And it's an anthology of people who have contributed to the book on the system that is broken in raising our children. And I believe that the way we're raising our children today, the educational curriculum, the lack of village raising our children, the oversaturation, the negativity, the separation in families, even obviously social media, etc. We're raising our children to live up to this stupid expectation of delusionment. And what's happening is they're growing into young adults with no connection to themselves. The gift that they are, the gift that they were meant to share, they don't know what it is, because it conform. You must do this to be popular, to be the A's. If you don't have an A, you're a failure. If you're not got 500 followers, you're this. If you aren't wearing that, you're that. If you're not pretty, you're that. And this is what we're doing to our children. And we're expecting them to be functional adults. Right. So we have to look at what's broken. And, the reason we're looking at what's going on in the world right now that has come so in our face right at the top. Well, I'm going to be blatant here. Scum rise to the top, scoop it off. The nectar is underneath, right? We are seeing it. It's in our face. It had to come. It had to come. It was behind the scenes all the time. Now it's blatantly in your face and you're offended. It's always been here. But now there's the invitation. What are you going to do about it?
And at some level, Carl Jung would say we've all participated in creation.
Yes, even with the la, 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 la.
So all of us have to own.
Yeah.
Even if we're not conscious of it, all of us have to own our part.
We do. And again, no blame, no shame.
Right.
Right. The Pied Piper was playing a tune that we followed. And now I just realized, hell, that music, it made me lose my mind. And certainly, my heart and soul, I wasn't listening to, and I need to redirect. right? So
Yeah, it's the emperor's new clothes all over.
yes, yes,
Only the two kids saw it.
right.
Everybody else just went along with it. And those two young boys said, he's naked as a jaybird. Yeah.
And that is the thing, isn't it? Is that people are calling it out and seeing it. And it's like, um, I draw the analogy that we're all an instrument in discovery. You know, what is our instrument? How do we play it? We can play it as a soloist and we can do very well. However, when we become an orchestra, each in our own strengths and harmoniously play together, we transcend, right? And I want the orchestra to be put together. I want everyone to come together with their gifts. Each and every one of you out there has something that you were gifted. Step into that. Look at a community that you can join with that collectively and be that force of love and common sense and compassion and kindness, because that's how we win.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But it's in every one of us, and it's that willing to go, yes, I'm traumatized. Yes, I'm angry. Yes, I'm anxious. But it's what am I going to do about it? That's the question we need to be asking.
Yeah. And um, until we ask those questions, we stay frozen.
Yeah.
We stay stuck.
Yes.
So getting
Yes.
stuck is really important.
Well, kind of that's the invitation to the reset, isn't it? I'm stuck. Well, what's made me stuck? Which leg goes forward? Which direction do I go in? And I think that's it's okay to be stagnant. Just don't stay there. It's asking you to stop and reflect. Don't mindlessly keep moving forward when you know that you're going to go off a cliff, right? So, what is the book Life Quest about?
Life Quest is basically a coaching book. I've spent the last 30 years in the coaching profession. I've coached folk from every walk of life, executives, CEOs, housewives, everybody, musicians, um, chiropractors, you name it.
Yeah.
I've got 30,000 hours of coach
Wow.
training experience. And I'm a board certified coach, which is the highest level of certification you can get with the ICF. Coaching is a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So the coach doesn't have all the answers. The coach simply exists to draw out of the client what the client needs to discover about themselves. So in the book, I attempt to write from a coaching perspective and invite the reader to explore various areas of their life and ask the hard question.
Yeah.
What do I really want?
Mm.
Which I would argue, and after all these years of coaching people from every walk of life, it is rare, very rare, when you ask a client, what do you genuinely want out of life? It takes them a while to get in touch with what that deep,
Yes.
sincerest core desire is. And
Mm.
I would argue, Sarah, that until we get to that core desire, we won't know what our calling is.
No, absolutely not. It's
And
knocking on
so,
your door, asking to
yeah,
come out. Pay
yeah.
attention.
And so the book is about there's current reality and there's desired reality. And in between current reality and desired reality, there's this liminal space that in coaching we call the gap.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole book is about dealing with the gap in between where we are and where we want to be. And I start with the story of Ella Fitzgerald at the Apollo Theater at 11 years old. When,
Mm.
because the Apollo, I mean, now the Apollo audience historically can be tough. I mean, it's like they're just honest. If they think you're lousy, they're going to throw stuff at you. But the Apollo Theater is a landmark in New York, right? I mean, I grew up in New
Yes.
York. But Ella at 11 years old was scheduled to dance. And she was waiting in the wings by the classic little tree stump that is there that everybody rubs for good luck, right? And the person before her was just phenomenal. And the standing ovation was, and so she was so overwhelmed and she was going to dance. And at the last minute, she walked out and they started throwing food at her. They ridiculed her before she did anything. And
Mm.
and then all of a sudden, because her mom taught her certain songs to sing, in jazz. She asked the band if they knew such and such a song, which was on a flip side of a major album. And they said, yeah. And they started playing. And Ella, at 11 years old, on the spot, started to sing, and the rest is history.
Right.
So she, in that liminal space between where she was and where she wanted to be, she touched that one thing that makes her unique.
The
And
gift.
so the hope is that when the reader reads Life Quest, that they'll get in touch with that one thing, that one kernel of power that is the core desire, that if you touch that, a whole world opens up to you. And then with that, that's the want to.
Yeah.
But that want to, if you have the want to and you honor the want to, it leads to a chance to. And in between, you'll think you don't have to have the how to. If you got the want to,
Yes. Yes.
the chance to will show up, and the how to,
Yes.
it'll just, you can just kind of improvise your way there, right?
Right.
So it's
Because
creative.
you're on the right
Exactly,
wave, right? And
exactly.
everything else will match you. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm hoping, you know, I mean, the book has had quite a circulation over the years, but I'm hoping that a new generation will find it and find their want to.
I have millennial kids, and they've not really been political. They just look at it and how a load of codswallop and they're all crooks, so that's how they feel about it. But what they have done is stepped up in their own communities. What they have done is I don't want to do things the way my parents did it. I want to do it this way. And I had a millennial on last week, and I said, what we have seen is a lot of millennials kind of hang back, almost like the 70s and the hippies,
Mhm.
abstaining from everything, right? Kind of this is our hippie generation. Whereas no, I need that sense of peace, and I need that sense of purpose in me, and I can't follow that path. But what my invitation to the millennials now is that I hear you. Now share that. Now share that. Be the leaders of the future, right? And share that peace, share that love, share that conviction where you're not money driven, where
Right,
you are purpose driven. Because,
right.
God, do we need purpose driven right now?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So
I do
important.
believe there is hope. I do believe we will come out of this. I do believe that,
We
we're
will.
still in the shakeup. That invitation to step up and change it up and wake up. This is the wake up call. And a
Mhm.
number of people have already stepped up, and a number of people are already changing it up. But people, the la la la, I can't see it. No, your eyes are closed. Open them. Um, what can I do? I'm only one person. Well, you as one person can find somebody else, and collectively together, this is your orchestra, this is your chorus, right? How do you come together to empower each other? It's not power over each other, empower each other, because that force of love, that force of meaningful purpose, compassion, and kindness, they don't stand a chance against that. They don't.
I agree.
So it's up to us. It's up
It
to
is.
us.
It is.
So just quickly tell us also a little bit about your other books there, Born to be Blessed, Shadow Self, and
That's actually a series. I'd rather if they want to read about my dark season that they read On the Edge of Hope. I think that would be more beneficial if they're battling anxiety, depression, things like that. On the Edge of Hope is my real candid. If I saw the bus coming, I'd have gotten out of the way.
right, right.
And
Yes.
mm,
You would have
and
avoided the cosmic 2x4.
yeah. And then Shadow Self is the newest one, which it gives it's more theological, but it gives a commentary on. I take where we've been pre, post COVID, and then through where we've been in this decade. But I start with the DC and the Marvel universe. We
Mm.
all need heroes,
Oh,
right?
God, do we? Yes.
So the DC universe is, and I'm growing up as a kid, I read DC. I had all the comic books for DC. I had all the comic books for Marvel. I had quite a collection. But I looked at the last 15 years of the DC films and the Marvel films from a cultural perspective.
Mhm.
And I looked at the themes that were being portrayed based on where the culture was just prior to COVID and then during COVID. And then with everything else that came with that. And so the DC universe is a mirror of our true selves because Superman dies, Batman bleeds.
Yes.
That's like, these
Yeah.
guys are flawed, right? They're
Yes.
imperfect, right?
Flawsome.
They're flawed. And then the Marvel universe is a window because they're flawless. The Marvel universe is
Yes.
like they take a beating and keep on going, and they just you can't kill them, right? They just so you've got this mirror and you've got a window, and in between we're all looking for heroes. So every chapter opens up with one of the major movies of the last 20 years. The Secret
Mm.
Life of Walter Mitty. I go through a bunch of them and I do cultural commentary, but then I do take a story from scripture, the ancient King Saul, who had all this potential, but was the tragic hero.
Mm.
And I deal with the notion of a tragic hero for the first half of the book, but then I raise the question, but what if?
Yes.
What if instead of allowing insecurity
Yeah.
to get in the way of our destiny and fear to get in the way of our future, what if we respond differently to the things that unnerve us about ourselves and unnerve us about the world? And so the last half of the book is an exploration of what could be if we are willing to pay attention to what's going on inside us. Carl Jung, I've studied Jung for 40 years. I'm not a Jungian analyst. I know Jungian analysts. I deeply respect them. And I have ongoing conversations with Jungian analysts, and I'm deeply grateful for that. They've been a great help to me. But Jung argued that if the world is going to change, I need to recognize that all of us are intimately connected.
Yeah.
And if I change at a deep level, something is affected in the collective.
Ripple,
And
ripple,
so
ripple.
the agency of change
Yes.
begins in me. So that whole be the change you want to see,
Yes.
that is, that's the core of how we get there. Because David Bohm, the heir apparent of Albert Einstein, began to explore from a place of quantum physics that if at the deepest, most invisible, subtle levels, everything is connected, if that's true scientifically, from a perspective of our humanness, how should we be conversing with one another? Which
Exactly.
created his major book on dialogue, and he compares dialogue to discussion. And he says our problem is we're discussing too much, and we're it's like a ping pong game where you just keep hitting the
Yeah.
opinion back and forth. But dialogue is where through shared communication, we each are enlarged by what each of us bring to the table. So that's kind of that anyway, but I touch on a little bit of that in the shadow self. And again, but
I love it.
they
I
feel like
love
it.
it. I'm a firm believer. If you want love, be the love you seek. You want peace, be this
Exactly.
peace you seek. You
Right.
want joy, be the joy you seek. It's amazing how many people who just simply don't have joy in their life anymore. And then another thing that has gone is wonderment, because people are so fearful of the unknown. So I have, again, a common sense theory on fear. Don't put your hand in the fire. Don't walk in front of a bus, right? Use that common sense fear of knowing that it's going to hurt you. But instead of being fearful of the unknown, step into wonderment.
Absolutely.
That common sense fear will go with you and protect you along the way. But if we're not explorers, if we're not willing to discover, if we're not willing to expand,
Mhm.
we get stuck and fermented and become toxic.
Right.
And this is where we're at right now. I think we're at a very toxic stage in
We are.
humanity. But the
We are.
invitation is please rise up.
Mhm.
Please step up. Please step forward. The biggest leap you will take will be the first step. But
Absolutely.
after that, it gets easier and easier and
Absolutely.
easier,
Yeah.
right?
0 to 1 is the hardest move, right?
It is. And
It is.
you've been stuck. I've been stuck. I know exactly what that rabbit hole is all about. And it's, I've done many a show on it myself. I deal with a condition that has a pain level on a good day at 5. Lately with the weather, what it is, um, I don't give it the power. It's a partner with me, right?
Mhm.
I know it's going to be with me for the rest of my life, and it's like, okay, you want your say. This is telling me I need to nurture and look after myself, and other times I need to do this. You've got to be with me, and so we cohabit, right? And the thing is, don't look at things out to get you. I understand why I was given this condition, because I'm a little bit too exuberant for many people. My energy can get a little passionate, and living in that pain level dampens it enough for people to receive, rather than me kind of not being able to reach people because being too high. And I think it's like, understand sometimes it's not there to get you or to punish you. It's there for you to empower yourself and to discover yourself and what your abilities really are. It's there for you to learn from. It's there for you to become the person you're meant to be from the inside out. Take the journey. Yeah, there's going to be ups and downs. But, the biggest thing is you land on your bum and you're not willing to get up, then you've given up. That's failure. Failure to me is not getting back up. That's just, let's try again. Let's try a different direction.
Right. Totally agree.
And my motto with these shows is listen, learn, and apply.
Yeah. So good.
So how they can apply is they can get your books and they can reach out to you. So where do they apply to get your books?
Amazon, they can get all my books are on Amazon. So they can go to Amazon or Barnes and Noble, Alibri, any of the major booksellers, they can get the books. They can go on my website at markchironna.com and see what's there.
Can you spell your name for the people who are just listening?
Yeah. Last name is like it now. If you remember the song from the Knack, My Chironna, it sounds like that, but it's not spelled that way. It's Chironna. So it's markchironna.com.
And you're on Facebook at Mark Chironna, Instagram,
Facebook,
Mark Chironna.
Instagram, Twitter.
I left there.
LinkedIn.
And of course, the books that just put in your name in Amazon or Barnes and Noble, and all of your books will come up.
They'll come up.
Right. And, like I always say, a book is something that keeps on giving. Right. And, I have another genre called the author's kiss, because I do believe that it's like a kiss. It's an embrace. When you read a book and it stays with you, or it makes you look at something different and it enables you in some way, it is like a kiss, like a hug. You've got quite a number of kisses and hugs there. So whatever stage somebody's at, somebody going through something, or you can even suggest to someone, we're all suffering from this anxiety right now. So this is the book that we should get at the present moment. And that is one on the edge of hope, right?
Yeah. On the edge of hope is the one that deals with that.
When we understand how other people got through it and what they face, relatability is that invitation. Gosh, you went through it. Look where you are now. How did you get there? But you first got to understand why you got where you got and what were the things that you did to be where you are now. And that's the invitation, that we can all get to that other side, on the sunny side of the street, if we're willing to cross the road and, face traffic. So
absolutely. Sarah, it's been a delight. I'm just really honored to have spent time with you. It's been wonderful.
I thank you, and just love everything that you're doing. And it's so needed right now. And, I ask people to have a podcast club or party, listen to the podcast, and then take notes. Everybody take notes of what they got from it. Then share those notes. And now you've just got a smorgasbord of information that can illuminate you. So it's all about sharing. If you're listening to podcasts solo, share it with other people, because there's so much anxiety out there right now. We need to bring it down. We are the solution to the problem, because we've also been the problem. So let us be the solution, and let's be there together for each other. So thank you so much for being here today, Mark.
Thank you.
Until next time, folks, remember, it's up to you. Bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. There are so many more for you here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. Just go to the podcast tag at the top there, and you will see all the many genres and all 3,000 shows ready for your listening. We are here to serve you, to help you on your journey of life, and we know that through inspiration, it begets invitation. We are supported by you, the listeners, and those that we interview. Anything that you can spare us in donation would be greatly accepted, and we do hope that you enjoy the next show.